Okay, ladies and gentlemen, students, whatever you want to call yourselves, I just got done, start over. You just got done watching the video on the layout, what I did on the machine. So now I'm going to explain a little bit of something else. I got to get off my chest. I got the board here. And, okay, so I laid that thing out. Got the center lines. Now I'm going to draw some pictures because I like to draw pictures. So step into my office. This is the office. My buddy Oscar used to say it all the time. Step into my office, and then we used to go draw on a piece of steel with a soapstone. But now we got something called dry erase. Anyways, okay, so here's that frame. Oh, I was going to fix that too. Not as good as, anyway, so here's that center section that I measured off of. 48 to here. On this bottom corner, I believe I had 8 3/4. Up here I had 9. On the other corner I had 9 and 9 1/4. So as I was saying earlier, that's what we call cattywampus. You ever heard of that? Cattywampus? Anyways, that's cattywampus. So it's basically, yeah, it's all jagged. So what you got to keep in mind in this particular instance is my plate, the new plate from the Factoria that built it for us, they upped the thickness from 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches. So if I come out here and I want, let's say, 48 and 9 is 57. I want an even number to the back side of that plate, but I might go with this 8 3/4 number. So out here, once I add the 1 1/4 inches, I get that number. I don't know. It's really kind of at this point a mute point. I just want that square. That end needs to be square so that I can bring the other half of it up to it, put the bearing in, and the rest of the machine is all in the same plane. We always like to work in straight lines here, unless you like working with curves, and then you're a French curve. Anyway, so if this was off a 1/4 inch and this is 20 feet long, if we don't do this parallel and perpendicular right here, we're going to end up like this, and that machine's going to look like a bent whatever. So anyways, that's the whole point of me getting that center line from here and scribing it down and getting it square. So basically, what I'm going to do next is show you how I'm going to prep that. How I'm going to prep the old the plate in the corners. You know I have a bevel here. I have let's show you a top-down view. This is the frame going towards, let's say this is my center line here, my 48. They've bonded or welded a plate on here already to give it extra thickness. And so I've already established a bevel. The plate is going to come down, and here's where the bearing goes. Let's just say right here. Okay, so I want to get that, let's just pick 9 inches. Okay, so we're going to come down from here to here is 9 inches. Now when I made that torch cut and all that stuff, it's kind of jagged, it ain't perfect, and that's okay, because that's the way it is. So where I'm going with this is, alright, I got 9 inches. Let's say I cut it with the torch, and over here in that corner it's 8 3/4 or 8 1/2. Let's just go to an extreme. But I want 9. So let's go back and say this is 8 3/4 right now, from here to here. 8 3/4. But I want 9 from here to here. So instead of trying to sit there, instead of hanging that plate, that nice new plate we got, instead of hanging it from a forklift or a crane or a come along or whatever we got, and trying to tack it in place, you know, getting it just perfect and where I want it, this is what I'm going to do. We call it backer bars, backer plates, whatever you want to call it. You may call it, a lot of guys use bolts and re-rod and they just fill in the gap, but I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off the top of that frame. Here's your axle once again. I'm going to drop a square, carpenter square or whatever, off the top. And I am going to put what I call a backer bar in there on all four sides of this thing. So I'll pick something maybe 3/8 thick, maybe a 1/4 inch thick, 1/4 inch, 3/8 thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that plate, let's say this isn't here yet, let's get rid of him. So I'm going to get this all cleaned up, the beveled edges all ground up and everything like that, and I'm going to put this piece of flat stock on the inside. And of course this is blown up bigger than it should be, but whatever. And all four sides of that. So all four, looking from the end, here's the transmission or the hole. So there's going to be a plate tacked on all four sides. Top, bottom, two sides. And so then what I can do is I can bring my old plate and I'll have all that stuff squared ahead of time, right off this top. And remember, we have a line here. I have this 48-inch line. I can draw over with the tape measure and go, okay, down here I'm, whatever it is, whatever it turns out to be, let's just pick that, 57, 9 inches. So it may be just like that. There may be that gap in there. And I will tack that plate square perpendicular to the top of the frame. So when I come over there, like I said, I was getting to, when I bring that plate over, we can just set it right against there. And everything is golden. It's golden, it's golden. And if I'm really, really intelligent, what I would do ahead of time is, okay, let's draw a picture of that plate, the one we're going to have to weld on there. It goes something like this. That's where the boss is for the cylinder that goes across. Here's your holes for the bearing. I'm a good drawer there. Okay, so if I go ahead and measure the overall width of this machine from this point to the other side, let's just call it up there. There's my other backer bar. And it's 40 inches and this is 46. Well, that's 3 inches on each side that I can, what I can do at that point is I just come in here and I strike a line on the back side at my 3 inches. Same here. I get the overall height of this plate. I divide it out to be centered. If that's how it's made, I haven't measured the plate yet, but that hole should be perfectly dead nut center on the plate where the bearing mounts. Should be. I haven't determined that yet, but those are all things to take into account. So here in the same token, you know what a token is? Anyways, so in the same breath, we just put, let's say we chalked our lines on there, and I would do it in chalk first. The part that is going to mate to the frame, right here. That part is going to come right up to the frame, and it's going to be, oh, that sucks. I don't like that color. Let's go with blue. It's just not dark enough for me. Anyways, when we put that plate up there and we got that gap, there's a couple things that's going to happen before I do that. And it's all in the details in the prep work, as I've told you before. Always in the details in the prep work. So, these backer bars. I'm going to go to the saw, cut bar stock at 20 inches, let's say it is. But I'm going to take that backer bar and I'm going to go ahead and, time for a demonstration. I'm going to take, for crumb's sakes, that's what happens when you leave your junk out. I'm in a constricted work area. Okay, so let's just pretend this is the backer bar. See the mill scale on there? This is something I've always done and learned from the old schoolers, and it takes time. And I know some bosses used to get pissed at me for doing it, but you know what? Even if it makes your welds 10%, 20% better, because that wire, that electricity isn't trying to bust through that mill scale. Mill scale is it's that crusty stuff on the top. So I'll take my sander and I'll sand that off. And I'll put that in place. Tack it in there. This will be a nice clean edge. Excuse me. And so that plate, when it comes back down here, geez, I swallowed a fly, I think. That plate, where you made your marks to where it's going to intersect, is going to be somewhere in this vicinity, parallel with the outside of here, okay? So, what you do with the plate, you make your chalk lines. Just not random, but you can be really rough, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that area and I'm going to grind and grind and grind. Especially on heavy plate, the mill scale is super duper thick. So I'm going to grind that off. It does a couple of things for me. Like I said, it makes that welding that much nicer. It makes it easier. It makes it more fun. When you're not fighting and you get all that extra slag coming to the surface because it's dirty. We always want clean prep steel. That's a given for me. And I'm trying to tell you that. Take that extra step. Grind that plate. Just the one surface. You don't have to grind all the way around it. And from this intersection where this plate butts up, so you don't here too. You know, if you know your weld is going to be a ½ inch short of the edge of this plate, well then grind this section. That's what the chalk lines are for. Grind them off. Then you have to lay it out one more time. You already know the dimensions. And then you can put another chalk line or a steel scribe a line in it. So when you, the other plan is here is to take a piece of tubing, whatever, tack weld it on there so I can hang it. Let's say there's a crane up here. We'll put a hook. That's the cables. I'm drawing and having fun. We'll put a hook there. That's pretty cool, ain't it? And we'll hang it up there, and we'll pretend in my shop I got a push button crane, and we'll lift that up. And we'll bring it over to this thing, and we'll put it right there. You can even weld a couple of pieces of angle iron on this edge. Tack weld, piece of angle, right in this vicinity. Just tack them on. So when you bring that plate over and you drop it down, guess what? It's home, Jerome. It's there. So basically then all you got to do is push against it a little bit with your left hip. Or if you're, your right hip. And you reach around and you got your welder ready and you go and you put your hood down and you make a couple of 1 inch long tacks and about 8 spots around there, and you're golden. You're done. You're done. So you don't have to sit there and fiddle with a square with that giant plate hanging in the air. The work's all done. When you can manage the little pieces and get all that stuff square ahead of time, tack them all in place. Check your work, double check. It's a lot easier to cut off let's say a 1/4 by 2, 3/8 by 2 flat bar in one length, a couple tacks, than it is to cut that whole plate off if you screw it up. So that is what I'm going to do in this next procedure. You saw me lay it out. It's getting on in a couple days later because we're just so busy in the shop, but I am hopefully tomorrow going to have at least a half day on my own in here. Anyways, that's beside the point. I'm going to get that prepped, and then I will show you exactly this process. So now I better follow through what I said, right? But old Harry Nelson in school used to always say, that was his name, Harold Nelson. He was our English teacher. He always used to say, do as I say, not as I do. What does that tell you? Anyways, he passed me in Spanish, and I still can't speak a word of it. But he was a good old school teacher. We'd catch him down in the boiler room too, smoking stogies and whatever. But he was a good guy. I learned a lot of this stuff from them old guys, and not how to smoke cigarettes, but just good habits. And you don't have to be a perfectionist. I kind of get that way sometimes. But then again, you also have to be able to tell yourself, you know what? A 1/16 of an inch is close enough. It's a 40,000 pound machine, and it tries, you know, you don't have to get anal retentive and hang plumb bobs and lasers and all that stuff. So there's a fine line between this and that and the other thing, but you still want to do it right, and you want to do a good job so it turns out and you can be proud of your work. And that's in and of itself a great quality. You go on in life and you go to get a job, and you look at stuff and you figure it out, and you can put stuff together like this. It does another thing. It makes it easier on your body, you know. And when you're doing setups, I see struggling all the time with one of my biggest peeves in the shop is lining up pins. You know, young guys like to take a boom and they'll hang well, like when we hang this bearing on, we're going to eventually have to put that bearing on here and then line it up. And I know what's going to happen. I just know. I know how I do it. I know how other people do it. A lot of other people go, oh, that's close, and then they try to stick a bolt in a hole, and it's that much off. Same with the big pins on these cylinders and the big equipment. You gotta look in there with a flashlight, and you gotta get it perfect. It's a machined object. You gotta get it right there before it'll slide in. And one of my most favorite things to do to young guys and old guys, and it's story time now. I'm done teaching. Well, I'm still teaching. I'm just doing it in a different way. My favorite thing to do with the guys in the shop, they'll struggle. They'll be setting a boom down on a grapple, or they'll be setting a boom. Let's say you see us putting these two halves of the machines together, and they just struggle, and I come over there with, let's say, a bottle jack or a pry bar or whatever, and I get my flashlight out and I go this way, that way, up, down, and then I put the pin in the hole and I take a couple light taps and it goes right in. That's one of my favorite things to do to these guys, because you can't force some things. And I don't know where I got off on this tangent, but it's part of this same thought process. You know, why swing the sledgehammer 40 times trying to drive a pin in a it's like driving a round pin into a square hole. Get it lined up, do the work ahead of time, get everything stabilized, whatever you got to do. Get your boom lined up with your cylinder, run your cylinder out, block it up, and then when you see all sides of that cylinder hole perfectly lined up, you should be able to slide your pin in. It is that simple if you let it be that simple. So that's my story today. I hope you follow me again, and I hope you watch this to the end, and you tell your youngins and your oldins and other peoples. And I got a lot of positive feedback on that layout already, the layout video, and I really appreciate that. And it means you guys are watching and you want to learn something. Even the one old guy said something about he's just getting into it. He said he was old. I don't know if he is or not, but Anyways, I'll shut up. I'm gonna get to work on that tomorrow. I'm gonna change my hat one of these days, so I got a new one for you guys to watch, look at, and that's it. I appreciate everything you guys do and the comments and following me. So take care, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. Over and out. See you, bye.